We live in a world where language has become currency, where compliments are traded like coins and validation is handed out in exchange for attention. But not all words carry the same weight. Not all praise nourishes the soul. Some words touch only the surface, while others reach the very core of a person. The difference lies in depth. The difference lies in intention. The difference lies in how much truth your words carry when you speak them. Flattery is noise. It fills the air with sweetness, but it rarely lingers. It's designed to please, not to connect. It's designed to charm, not to understand. The words may sound beautiful, but they are hollow, spoken not to uplift, but to gain something in return. You can feel it when someone flatters you. Their tone might be warm, their eyes might sparkle, but their energy reveals their motive. Flattery comes from a place of wanting to be liked, not from a place of wanting to see you. Depth, on the other hand, is truth dressed in simplicity. When someone speaks with depth, they speak from presence, from observation, from genuine understanding. They are not trying to make you like them. They are simply acknowledging what is real about you. Words of depth require attention, empathy, and courage. They can't be manufactured. They can't be memorized. They come only when you choose to see someone beyond their surface, beyond their appearance, beyond what they present to the world. A man who says, "You're beautiful," might get a smile, but a man who says, "There's a peace in your energy that calms everyone around you," will reach her spirit. Because the second statement is not about her looks, it's about her essence. It shows he's paying attention to who she is, not just what she shows. Words of depth create emotional gravity. They draw people in, not through charm, but through understanding. They don't make noise. They make connection. Most people use words to impress, but few use them to express. When your intention is to impress, you speak to be heard. But when your intention is to express, you speak to be understood. And the human heart can always tell the difference. People are not hungry for compliments. They are starving for truth. They crave to be seen in ways the world never bothered to notice. They long for someone who recognizes the parts of them that don't scream for attention. And what most don't realize is that the power of depth doesn't come from grand or poetic language. It comes from awareness, from stillness, from seeing beyond what most people see. When you compliment someone's looks, you're acknowledging what's obvious. When you acknowledge their energy, their values, their effort, their peace, their silence, you're acknowledging what's rare. Depth requires you to slow down. It requires you to listen, not just to words, but to tone, to pauses, to unspoken stories. It requires empathy, not ego. And when you develop that kind of awareness, your words begin to heal instead of impress. You can tell when someone has lived through depth because their words carry weight. They don't say much, but when they do, it lands. It's because their truth is anchored in authenticity. Their words are born from experience, from observation, from silence. They don't flatter, they affirm. They don't chase validation, they offer presence. Think about it. Why do some conversations linger in your memory while others fade within minutes? It's because one spoke to your ego and the other spoke to your soul. Ego thrives on flattery, soul thrives on depth. The ego wants to be admired, the soul wants to be understood. And in relationships, friendships, or even passing connections, the difference between attraction and attachment often depends on the level of depth in your communication. A person may forget what you said, but they will never forget how your words made them feel. And words of depth make people feel seen, valued, and understood in ways that flattery never can. When you compliment someone's effort, you're saying, "I see the work you've put in." When you acknowledge their growth, you're saying, I see how far you've come. When you recognize their peace, you're saying, I see the light you carry even in silence. People who constantly flatter often do so from insecurity. They fear silence, they fear rejection, so they use excessive words as a shield. But people who speak from depth are not afraid of pauses. They are not afraid of simplicity. They know that true power lies in intention, not volume. A single sentence of truth can hold more beauty than 1,000 lines of empty praise. Depth is magnetic because it's rare. In a world full of rehearsed compliments and social performances, authenticity stands out. When you speak with depth, you break patterns, you interrupt the noise, you make someone stop and think, wait, they actually see me. That pause, that realization is where connection begins. The irony is, most people believe flattery will make them more likable, but in reality, it often makes them forgettable. Because flattery is predictable. It follows a script. It tells people what they've already heard 100 times before. But depth creates surprise. It disarms. It awakens curiosity. It makes people wonder, who are you that you can see that in me? And that's the power of words rooted in observation. They reveal emotional intelligence. They signal maturity. They show that you've evolved beyond shallow patterns of communication. That's what makes people gravitate toward you, not the words themselves, but the consciousness behind them. There's a difference between complimenting and connecting. Complimenting is about delivery. Connecting is about discovery. When you connect, you speak with intention to understand, not to gain. You're not saying what you think they want to hear. You're saying what your soul genuinely perceives. And that authenticity builds trust. It's why some people's words heal you even when they're simple, while others' words drain you even when they sound beautiful. Depth heals because it aligns with truth. Flattery drains because it aligns with ego. Words of depth require courage because they expose vulnerability. To speak deeply, you must first feel deeply. You can't offer depth if you've never faced yourself. You can't recognize someone's light if you've never sat with your own darkness. That's why the most grounded, emotionally aware people don't flatter. They acknowledge, they honor, they articulate what most overlook. They might say, you have a kind of strength that's quiet but firm. Or, I noticed how you always bring calm when everyone else is anxious. Those are words of depth. They're not rehearsed, they're real. Depth comes from emotional awareness, and emotional awareness comes from self-work. The more you understand yourself, the more accurately you perceive others. When you heal, your words heal too. When you grow, your presence deepens. When you stop seeking approval, your compliments become sincere. In a world of exaggerated emotions and performative words, people crave simplicity with sincerity. They don't need someone who flatters their beauty. They need someone who honors their being. They don't want to be admired. They want to be understood. Flattery creates temporary warmth. Depth creates lasting resonance. Flattery says, I want your attention. Depth says, I respect your soul. When you start valuing depth over flattery, your relationships transform. Conversations become more meaningful. Connections become more grounded. You stop saying what sounds good and start saying what feels real. You begin to see people as stories instead of trophies. And once you start seeing through that lens, you realize how powerful genuine communication truly is. Every word you speak carries frequency. When that frequency comes from ego, it flatters. When it comes from soul, it connects. Words of depth vibrate differently. They carry emotion, awareness, stillness, all woven together. They pierce through walls that flattery could never reach. Depth speaks to the inner world, not the outer appearance. It honors emotions that never had words before. It validates experiences that went unnoticed. And in doing so, it builds something that flattery could never achieve: trust. The reason depth feels so magnetic is because it reflects the part of every person that longs to be understood. When you speak from depth, you awaken that part in others. You remind them that they are not invisible. You remind them that someone sees their quiet strength, their resilience, their calm, their growth. Words of flattery make someone smile for a moment. Words of depth make them remember you for a lifetime, because it's never just about what you say, it's about what your words awaken in them. When your words carry awareness, they bring light to places that were once hidden. And when you can do that, you stop needing to chase validation, because your energy itself becomes validation. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they speak. Some use words as decoration, others use them as revelation. One speaks to be liked, the other speaks to be understood. That's the difference between flattery and depth, between surface attraction and emotional connection, between words that sound good and words that feel real. Flattery is easy, it's rehearsed, it rolls off the tongue because it's designed to. You're beautiful, you're amazing, you're perfect. The world is full of those lines. But what do they really mean? They don't tell you who you are. They tell you what someone wants from you. They don't see your essence. They just echo what they think will please your ears. Depth, though, is rare. It's not about saying what everyone else says. It's about seeing what everyone else overlooks. It's not about using fancy words. It's about using truthful ones. When you speak with depth, you're not trying to get attention. You're giving understanding. You're not looking for approval. You're offering awareness. When you tell someone you have a calmness that makes everyone around you feel safe, you're not flattering their ego. You're acknowledging their spirit. You're speaking to something within them that they may not even have noticed. That's what makes depth powerful. It penetrates beyond appearance. It touches places flattery can never reach. Because flattery feeds insecurity, depth feeds the soul. We live in a culture obsessed with validation. People crave attention so much that they'll settle for empty words. But attention isn't love, and flattery isn't connection. It's just noise, temporary and hollow. It makes you feel good for a moment, but it leaves you emptier than before. Depth, on the other hand, requires silence, awareness, and empathy. It demands that you pay attention not to how someone looks, but to how they move, how they think, how they make others feel. To speak with depth, you must first learn to see with sincerity. The truth is, people are not moved by what they hear. They are moved by what they feel behind what they hear. You can say 1,000 flattering things, but if your energy doesn't carry authenticity, it won't land. It's not the words that create the impact. It's the truth they carry. When you flatter, you mimic. When you speak with depth, you express. The world has too many voices echoing the same shallow compliments, and too few voices daring to speak the truth that actually matters. A woman hears, "You're beautiful," 100 times a week. It loses its meaning. But when someone looks at her and says, "You carry yourself with strength even when you're tired," that's different. That's not flattery. That's recognition. That's acknowledgement. That's depth. Because depth is not about perfection, it's about perception. When you speak from depth, you make people feel seen, not just admired. You show them that you're paying attention to what most overlook. You see the quiet details, the way they hold themselves together after breaking, the way their silence says more than their words, the way they carry kindness even after being hurt. That's what makes someone feel understood. That's what builds connection. And trust is what everyone is secretly searching for. In a world full of empty compliments and fake admiration, being seen with truth feels like peace. It's rare, but when it happens, it lingers. You remember the people who spoke to your soul, not the ones who praised your looks. You remember the ones who saw the light in your darkness, not the ones who only showed up when it was bright. That's why words of depth are powerful. They don't fade with time. They echo in the heart. They create emotional memory. When someone speaks from depth, their words stay with you long after they're gone because they spoke to who you are, not who you pretend to be. Depth requires courage. To speak deeply means you risk vulnerability. You risk being misunderstood. You risk breaking the surface where most people feel comfortable. But that's what separates real from artificial. The real ones don't fear silence. They don't fear honesty. They don't fear saying less but meaning more. Most people hide behind flattery because it's safe. It doesn't reveal too much. It keeps everything light and easy. But easy rarely creates impact. Easy rarely builds trust. Easy rarely touches the heart. Depth takes effort. It takes listening. It takes noticing the things that don't scream for attention. The way someone avoids eye contact when they're hurt. The way their laughter carries a hint of pain. The way they stay kind even when the world isn't. That's where true beauty lies, not in what's obvious, but in what's unseen. Flattery stays on the lips. Depth reaches the heart. When your words come from observation, from stillness, from understanding, you don't need to speak much. Your presence communicates more than your sentences ever could. People can feel when you see them beyond their masks. They can feel when your words come from genuine emotion, not from agenda. You see, the world doesn't need more people saying the right things. It needs more people feeling the right things. When your heart is aligned with truth, your words will naturally carry power. You won't need to rehearse compliments. They'll flow naturally because you actually mean them. Depth is honesty delivered with empathy. It's not about being intense. It's about being real. It's about choosing meaning over manipulation, awareness over approval, truth over noise. And the beautiful thing about depth is it doesn't demand attention. It earns it effortlessly because authenticity has a frequency that everyone can feel. You don't have to shout to be heard when your words come from a place of truth. When someone says, you have a softness that makes people feel safe, or you speak with a calm that feels healing, it touches deeper than you're hot or you're perfect because it reaches the emotional core, not just the physical surface. It's not about attraction, it's about connection. In every relationship, you'll find two kinds of language, the kind that fills the air and the kind that fills the soul. The first fades, the second transforms. And people who've tasted depth can never go back to flattery. Once you've been truly seen, surface level attention feels like noise. You crave substance. You crave understanding. You crave words that hold weight. That's why it's important to become a person of depth yourself. Learn to listen beyond words. Learn to notice the small details. Learn to observe energy. Learn to understand silence. Because when you see deeply, you speak deeply. And when you speak deeply, you connect beyond appearances. Depth changes the dynamic of every interaction. It's not about trying to win someone. It's about trying to understand them. Not about trying to sound good. It's about being real. Not about feeding ego. It's about nourishing connection. You attract what you mirror. When you operate on the surface, you attract people who do the same. When you operate from depth, you attract people who feel safe in truth. That's why your words matter, not just in what you say, but in what energy they carry. When your words come from depth, they carry respect, they carry awareness, they carry presence. They remind people that they are more than their looks, more than their status, more than their achievements. They remind them that they are human, seen, and valued. And people never forget that feeling. Words of depth don't need to be poetic. They just need to be honest. I admire how you handle things with grace. You don't talk much, but your silence speaks peace. You inspire calm wherever you go. These are not grand statements, but they're real, and reality is what resonates.